Well, it's coffee and chocky digestive time again, so I thought I'd have a look at and see what our old mate Ben Emlyn-Jones has been up to. And he's doing a thing called the BBC and mind control. So it says here, a close look at one of the world's biggest media platforms. The BBC claims to be a vehicle to entertain and educate the people, but in reality it is a mind control operation designed to demoralise, confuse and mislead us. Yeah, that EastEnders, I mean, it's terribly demoralising and misleading, isn't it? Is EastEnders the BBC program? I haven't lived in the UK for a very long time. Certainly the ABC where I live is certainly not demoralising, confusing or misleading, as far as I know. That's run by the same. I mean, the BBC's British, the ABC's Australian. Where are they getting their direction from? I mean, really, the Australians don't like to hear it. Australia is an annex of England, after all. It's very much. It's a lot more like America than the UK, but it's still an annex of England. But anyway, I'm going off at a bit of a tangent here. The BBC is a mind control operation designed to demoralise, confuse, and mislead us. The signs are all there, with the recent sexual abuse scandal involving some of the biggest stars, the content of its broadcasts, and even in the architecture of its headquarters. Yeah, okay. Well, is there anybody out there that isn't suffering from paranoia or schizophrenia, possibly, that really believes that the BBC is out to demoralise, confuse and mislead us? Personally, I think that's absolute poppycock, piffle and twaddle. Okay, let's see what Ben's got to say about this. The BBC controlling our minds. Oh, Ben's trying to control our minds. He's trying to relax us by playing ocean sounds. Can you hear the ocean? Just lapping up the beach there, just washing up the beach, up the sand, and then back into the ocean again. I'm feeling mind controlled. How about you? Yeah, I'm going to snip this out and use this. This is handy. I'll use this as a disclaimer in my videos. When are we going to get on with it?
Hospital porters' pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order. Well...
Can see over Ben's left shoulder there, his best buddy and confidant. Where was that? Hang on a sec. I'm just going to pause this for a second. Okay, now in order to convince us that the BBC is actually trying to control our minds, Ben has put up this rather helpful graphic. Where he's got BBC here in great big letters. He's got this obey with a little spiral there. Controlling your mind, the BBC, with those colour bars. After watching this, you're going to go out and you're going to want to buy lots of bars of different colours. We have the BBC relentlessly trying to control this guy's mind. And we've got some, whatever these are, with all their brains wired together. There's a skull there with a light bulb in it, and this is convincing stuff, isn't it? Just to be, just to show us how invested Ben is in this particular theory. He's put a selfie, a useful selfie there. There's Ben being controlled, being mind controlled by the BBC. Okay, well, let's see what he's got to say. Oh God, I can't see the bloody thing now past the camera. There we
So if anyone from the BBC is watching, all I can say is it's not working, you know, because we're still here, we're still talking.
I hope you can hear that. It's not terribly loud, but he's saying if anyone from the BBC is watching, it's not working, we're still here, we're still talking about it. Well, perhaps that's pretty good evidence that there's no mind control going on, eh, Ben? That all this is in your mind. Just out of curiosity, I wonder if you've been diagnosed with paranoia or schizophrenia, Ben? Or are you taking any kind of a medication for mental health issues, possibly?
Stopped us. Now, what is the BBC? And the BBC is more than what it first appears. To begin with, I mean, it's a very, very important part of the global media network. It's called the British Broadcasting Corporation, but it is actually an international conglomerate. There's something called BBC Worldwide, which is essentially the governing body which controls everything on the BBC.
Not sure that's true. I mean, it's called the BBC because it was called the British Broadcasting Corporation, or the British Broadcasting Company, way back years and years and years ago when they first started broadcasting and they had the broadcasting monopoly. And it was just a very sort of stiff upper lip name for the British Broadcasting Company or Corporation, because that's what it was and is. And BBC World is a part of that. BBC World is the part of the BBC that sells BBC programmes around the world. So Top Gear, for example, would have been sold by BBC World, and they made a lot of money out of it. Nothing suspicious about that whatsoever. The BBC tries to make money out of the programmes just like any other media outlet.
It broadcasts in 28 languages regularly, 24 hours a day, and it has other publications in many, many more languages. It operates in every single country on Earth. It has representatives and facilities.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that's true. I think Ben's looked at Wikipedia, and it says that the BBC is available in 200 countries, and then he's looked at Wikipedia, and it says that how many countries in the world, and it says there's 198. So he says, well, it's available, or it operates in every country in the world. And I'm not sure it's true. You might be able to hear the BBC. A lot of the BBC World Service shortwave services have closed, of course, because it costs a lot of money to run big shortwave transmitters. Same is true with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. Recently, they've closed down their shortwave broadcasting service to save money. So, I mean, if you went to Ethiopia or Somalia, are you going to find a BBC office there? You go to the Sudan. If you go to Mongolia, are you going to find a BBC office there? I doubt it. Perhaps you could try, if you're really interested, you could try Googling BBC Ethiopia or Sudan, or just have a look at Africa and pick one of the little tiny countries. Equatorial Guinea, do they have a BBC office there? BBC Studios, I very much doubt it. So, this is just piffle.
All over the world. It's also the oldest of these particular networks that you hear about. There's others such as CNN, CBS, controlled by various people such as...
Well, nothing wrong with being the oldest. So what? That's of no interest whatsoever. Certainly got nothing to do with mind control, has it?
Rupert Murdoch and other people. There's a small number of people who control the media in the world. The BBC...
Yeah, you're on YouTube, Ben. Someone controlling you, are they?
Is not actually part of this particular network in the sense of on an organisational level, because the BBC is a nationalised institution under a royal charter. So it's not privately owned, it's actually state-owned. But its origins can be traced right back to the dawn of the first radio transmissions, particularly a man called John Reith. Now, John Reith, he became Sir John Reith because he was knighted.
Nothing wrong with that. You've got to start somewhere. The BBC was born in the infancy of broadcasting. So what? Okay, I'll just pause that here and see if I can find something interesting. So far, this is just absolute rubbish. I'm really surprised Ben hasn't picked up on this. BBC Earth. So there might be a BBC Saturn or a BBC Jupiter, perhaps. Okay, now just have a listen to Ben's introduction here.
Thank you very much. It's great to be back here again. This is my 4th visit to New Horizons St Anne's, and every time it's absolutely wonderful. I really enjoy it.
So he really loves presenting. You know, that's what it's all about. He's there because he enjoys standing in front of a crowd and being applauded, and he laps up that kind of attention.
And so you guys here, it's really amazing because you could be at home watching television right now. And so you coming here means you prefer to come and see me than sit at home watching television, watching mainstream television from the BBC or any of the so-called independent platforms. So yeah, it's really, really great. It's a shame, obviously it's a shame. You know, I'd rather be like at Blackpool FC Stadium talking to people, but...
Yeah, okay. So yes, thank you for coming to see me. And he's saying that he would love to be standing in front of a crowd at a stadium instead of in a pub or wherever they hold this. So Ben is lapping up the attention, and I think that's what most of this conspiracy theory stuff is about. They either like, you know, look at me. They like the attention of the crowd, the applause. It makes them feel like they're somebody. To stand up and present, they can talk about presenting at conferences, and has very little to do with the subject matter. Of course, if they can make money out of it by selling books that are just cover-to-cover bullshit, and you know, DVDs and all that sort of stuff, that's just better still. You know, if you can beg for money on Patreon or run ads on your YouTube channel, that's great. But it's all about the self-adulation. Look at me, I can stand up here and present, and people clap and "Way, more," and they just come up with more and more bloody bullshit so that they can do that. I think that's what a large percentage of this absolute rubbish you hear from these people is all about. I'm sure they probably don't believe half of it themselves. They just want to stand in front of a crowd and feel like they're a bit of a celebrity. Okay. We're going to let that run on a bit, maybe.
Sorry, you know, you guys, thank you very much for coming.
Very small audience, but yeah, no problem. Thank you for coming. I'd much sooner be presenting to a stadium full of people, but this half a dozen people in the pub will just have to do.
And I'm going to talk about the BBC tonight, but I'm going to go off on several tangents because the BBC...
Been going off at tangents. Who'd believe that? Never would have picked that. I'll pause that there. I'm actually going to just let that continue for a bit because I think this comment is quite interesting.
The BBC is more than it first appears to be, and it's related to, as Rob was saying, mind control, about the conquest of the human mind.
The BBC is about the conquest of the human mind. Now, where on earth has that come from? Where on earth? What would if the BBC conquered every mind on earth? What do you think they would do with it?
Which is the conquest of the keep of the fortress and the battle for and against the New World Order.
Yeah, this is paranoid, delusional drivel. Anyone with an IQ bigger than their shoe size will recognise that one sentence as being paranoid, delusional drivel, and and I think most people with an IQ bigger than their shoe size would just stop the video there. Where are we? What are we? 7 minutes 28 into a 2-hour 24-minute video, and just put a line through it. If that's going to be the standard of the sort of stuff that's going to be going on for the next 2 hours, it's going to be a complete waste of your time. It's going to be a couple of hours of your life that you're not going to get back, and you would have burnt it up for nothing. I'm going to flick through this and see what I can find that's worth commenting on, just for the hell of it. I've got a couple of hours of my life to burn up while I'm having some chalky digestives and a coffee, so I'll pause this here and see what other drivel I can find. Okay, he's going to make some attempt to make some kind of link between how the BBC Broadcasting House looks compared with some was it Babylonian thing? Certainly the Babel part of it is right. Hang on, let's have a look.
And you go in there, and that was the first ever radio centre, the national radio centre in Britain. As if there's various substations all around the world, around the country.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Nothing whatsoever to do with mind control. Where are we going with this?
But this is where national radio was broadcast from. Looks a bit like that, doesn't it?
So you reckon that looks like Broadcasting House, do you? What on earth are you on, Ben? Really? Even if it did even slightly resemble this, whatever it is, this Babylonian castle, what could you possibly draw from that? You know, maybe the architects that designed Broadcasting House drew inspiration from historical architecture that looked a little bit different, a little bit interesting. You can draw nothing whatsoever from that. It's twaddle.
Looks very similar. That is the Tower of Babel from Bruegel, famous painter. The Tower of Babel from the Bible was a story about a man who wanted to build a tower high enough to reach heaven. A king called Nimrod, and he constructed this tower.
Well, I suppose the next thing he'll be saying is that the Air Force, the Royal Air Force, is trying to control our minds because they use Nimrod aircraft. I'm going to stop this here. I can't take too much more of this. Absolute poppycock. Now he's going to tell us that this is George Orwell. He's going to tell us that who worked for the BBC. He's going to tell us that George Orwell wrote the novel 1984, and it wasn't actually a novel. You know, it was a warning. It was some kind of warning that you know, this was all really going to happen. And let's just see what he says here.
Broadcasting House. Now, what's interesting is that all the rooms in Broadcasting House have numbers.
All the rooms have numbers. Cool, 60 minutes. That's just astonishing.
And he worked in a particular. His office had a particular number, like every other room. Can you guess what the number was?
No.
Correct. Room 101 was George Orwell's office.
And so, yeah, George Orwell's office was room 101. So presumably, room 101 features in the novel. Well, if he's walking into room 101 every day and he's writing a novel, he might just pick room 101 out of the air. Now, why would his imagination go straight to room 101? If he opens the door with 101 written on it every day. Yeah, more codswallop.
Some more interesting and sinister elements to the architecture of Broadcasting House. Now this is above the door to the cafe, this bas relief here, in the Portland stone the building was built out of. Now this was carved by someone called Eric Gill. I'll say a little more about him in a minute because he's very interesting. He himself, I think, is a rather worrying figure, shall we say. But this is actually a scene from Shakespeare's play A Midsummer Night's Dream. The character in the middle is Puck, who's a kind of like fawn, satyr type creature with goat legs, playing his little panpipe there, you see. And as you see, he's dancing with him are two young girls, and they're lifting their skirts up.
Are they? Really, Ben, your mind, this is more absolute rubbish. I mean, if you look at it, to me, I mean, this looks like a little hand fan, you know. There's a handle there. And she'd probably sort of hold it the other way up and fan her face with it. And the same with that. They're not lifting their skirts up. Where do you get this bloody rubbish, Ben? It's beyond rubbish, really. Honestly, I don't know how much more of this I'm going to persevere with. It is... I mean, I wouldn't go along to one of these presentations and pay money to see it anyway, but if I'd have gone along and I'd have paid a couple of quid to see Ben Jones at this, whatever this thing was, I'd have been asking for my money back. This is beyond a rubbish. Okay, just fast forwarded through this bloody nonsense. See what he's got to say about Brian Cox.
This is a good man I told you about earlier. I was telling you who I talked about it, because he exemplifies the perfect complicit media whore.
Why is that, Ben? Because he's got a huge audience and he's making lots of money, and you're talking to half a dozen people in a pub.
He really does. He's a man who was nobody until 2005. He was a successful part of.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he was a nobody. I mean, you know, he's a physics professor. I think he does quantum physics, doesn't he? Works at CERN. I would say that, sort of professionally speaking. All right, in the media he may have been a nobody, but in life I would say that he was far more successful than someone that had reached the dizzy heights of hospital portering, personally.
Yeah. He was a successful particle physicist at the CERN.
Oh, okay, so he's telling us that he's a successful particle physicist, okay.
And so he presented a science programme on the BBC in 2005 to Horizon. Celebrating the anniversary of the centenary of the publication of Albert Einstein's theory of special relativity from 1985. And what can I say?
Yeah, well, what can you say? What the hell's this got to do with mind control? And the BBC controlling our minds? I would suggest nothing whatsoever, Ben.
Opportunity knocked, and a star was born.
Yeah, just like Jamie Oliver with his cooking show. He's trying to brainwash us, is he? Into... eating less packets of cheese and onion crisps. Well, it's not working. I love them.
They obviously thought that he had the right stuff to become one of them, one of their front men.
He had the right stuff to become one of their front men. Yes, I would say that's probably true. Because, I mean, Brian Cox is obviously a very smart guy. He's a good-looking chap. The women love him. He's got a way of explaining things that I think is very good. If you're not a physicist or something like that, you can understand what he's saying. He's got a good way of explaining stuff to the layman. So you know, if I was with the BBC or ITV or any media outlet and I needed someone to present science programs and I saw this guy, I would probably say, this guy's good. I'll see if he's interested in doing some stuff for me. So, you know, nothing, I can't see anything wrong with that at all.
Imagine a worse insight. I really can't. If they had said that about me, I'd wonder what the hell I was doing wrong. It would generate some real soul searching for me. But he lapped it up. They've been stroking his ego till his...
You would lap it up too, Ben. You told us at the beginning of this you'd sooner present in front of a stadium. So don't give us that bloody rubbish. Might be jealousy on Ben's part here. He's jealous that no one's gone up to him and said, "Hey, do you want to come and do some stuff for us? And we'll pay you some real money, and you can get your face on some prime time real media outlets."
Stands out like a cat.
Instead of standing in a bloody pub talking to a bunch of paranoid, schizophrenic nutcases.
And he doesn't. I don't think he has the mindset to realise what he is being used for. About how deep down they don't like him. They just see him as someone they can use. He's a useful idiot. I don't believe he's an insider.
He's a useful idiot. I don't think there's too many idiots that get to be professors, you know. in a university, a professor, actually get a chair at a university, especially in physics. I mean, that's a pretty, in some of these professorships are in stuff that really wouldn't be academically challenging, I suspect. But physics, yes. Physics, electrical engineering, all that sort of stuff. Academically, it's very tough stuff. You have to be pretty smart to get your head around that. Yes, he's certainly no idiot.
He's lying to us. I think he's sincere, and he just swallows it all. And there's a perfect example actually, because he doesn't always do as he's told. This guy, and it's really, really funny. Do you ever see Stargazing live? It's like a live astronomy program.
Actually, I did see Stargazing live, and I wasn't very impressed with that. But I don't remember it in well enough detail to tell you why I wasn't very impressed with it. Anyway, I think that's enough of Brian Cox. I'm just going to pause that there. Yeah, now he's talking about this conspiracy theory road trip television series, and he's going to go on to tell us a little bit about it. But he says, I don't know if it's going to be on this particular clip, but he says that all of the episodes of that series are available except the one about 9/11. Now, I'm not going to go into that 9/11. The official story of 9/11 is what happened. It's as simple as that. Don't read anything else into that. It's twaddle. Now, Ben tells us this guy had his mind changed because basically it was just a case of getting some conspiracy theorists in a bus and taking them around and looking at the arguments for the conspiracy and trying to shoot them full of holes, basically, which is very easy to do because most of these conspiracies are rubbish. And anyway, the 9/11 one apparently, well, according to Ben, I haven't checked this, but apparently the 9/11 episode is the only episode that's not available. I suspect that one of the reasons that it might not be available is this woman here, I'm pretty sure it was this woman here, was taken up in a plane. She'd never flown a plane in her life, because they were saying, these guys just got in these airliners and were able to accurately fly them at high speed into these buildings. And this woman had never been in a plane, never flown a plane in her life. Took her up in a light plane, buzzed her around for a little while, and said, "Do you reckon you could hit those buildings with it?" And it was very obvious that she could. I've had one flying lesson, and I'm very sure that if I sat in the pilot seat of a plane that was flying and there was a big building sticking up in the air, I could hit it. When I had the trial flying lesson, we took off. Went up to about 1,500 feet, and I said, the instructor said to me, we were just chatting. I said, "Well, I fly radio control models. I know what all the control surfaces do." And he said, "Oh, well, over there in the distance was Fords of Dagenham car plant." He said, "Fly to Fords of Dagenham and fly figure eights over it." And I just flew to Fords at Dagenham and flew figure eights over it. I've never controlled a plane in my life. I would have very easily have been able to fly that plane into a tall building, especially a big one. So I suspect that had a lot to do with it, because it was showing people how easy it would be to do something like that. Let's just see what Ben's saying here.
And although it went quiet very suddenly, he just disappeared. No one knows where he's gone. But he was the only one who changed his mind.
That was this big guy he's talking about.
It's really quite incredible. And he said, "Oh, I used to believe he's a Scottish guy. I used to believe in his conspiracy theories, but I mean,
that accent there, I thought it was a Pakistani, Ben.
Conspiracy theories, but really, I've been looking into it, and after careful consideration, I've decided that actually the official story is true, and I've been..."
Of course it is. Anyone with an IQ bigger than their shoe size can see that the official story is true.
Misled. And of course, he did some news reports. He was on the news and things like that, newspapers. He received a lot of abuse for this from our side of the fence, and I don't...
Well, what a surprise. If the official story is true, you've got nothing to talk about in the pub, have you? You've got nothing to stand up on a stage in front of your adoring fans and tell them. It all falls into a big heap, doesn't it? Okay, so let's... what else have we got here? Oh, this is.
It's same presenter, Andrew Maxwell, and here he is.
Now, I'm surprised that this guy wasn't actually in the UFO one. This was on the this particular episode was dealing with 7/7. I actually did a video about this called, and there was a guy that did a video called the 7/7 Ripple Effect, which was so full of holes. It had more holes than a colander, and I made a video on my channel, and it's called 7/7 Raspberry Ripple Effect, pointing out some of the gaping chasms in the conspiracy theory. Again, there's no conspiracy there. The official story is exactly what happened. This guy here is Tony Topping. Now, he's a mate of Ben's, so I'm surprised he wasn't in the UFO one. But he was very surprised when he saw this bus destroyed by homemade explosives. And if you get to see that episode, just watch the expression on his face, and you can read his lips as to what he's saying. Now, Tony Topping is another one of these guys that's nutty as a fruitcake. He tells people that UFOs are flying backwards and forwards over his house all the time. He goes outside and sees a bright light in the sky, and he thinks it's an alien spacecraft trying to communicate with him. So another one that I suspect may be receiving treatment for a mental health disorder, or possibly should be. No videos of any of this. None of his neighbours are on 60 Minutes saying, "Hey, the bloke next door is visited by aliens all the time. You know, the cups and saucers on my kitchen table are rattling all the time because these alien spacecraft are just flying so low over his house, which happens to be next door." Yeah, it's absolute rubbish. So if you ever see this guy, or you see this guy's name on a bill anywhere, Tony Topping, save your money. Complete waste of time.
It seems to be happening all over the place. It's where names are changing various things.
Now he's goodness knows what this has got to do with anything. He's saying this pub has changed its name a number of times. Look, to be perfectly honest, I can't be bothered with the rest of this. It's beyond rubbish. What's the time stamp on this? Well, an hour and 21 minutes into a 2-hour 24 presentation. I'm not going to waste another hour of my life looking at this absolute garbage. Well, if you've made it this far, thanks for watching. Perhaps I'll catch you again.